Angela Bermudez. I'm a researcher. I work at the Center for Applied Ethics in Deusto University in Bilbao, in Spain. And I'm part of the Making Histories project. And one of the research interests that I'm bringing into this project relates to the work I've done in the past several years, analyzing narratives of violent pasts, mainly in how they portray violence in the narratives that we get in history textbooks. So our general question has been, how is violence represented in historical narratives and in textbook narratives? What came out of that research was identifying 10 narrative mechanisms, 10 mechanisms in which narratives talk about violence, and how, depending on those narrative mechanisms, how they portray violence in ways that facilitate or hinder the possibility of developing a critical understanding of violence. Textbook narratives are full of references to violence. It's not that violence is not talked about, but the way in which they talk about violence achieve one sort of main result, that is normalizing violence, making us think or understand that violence, even if you think it's bad, even if you think it's sad, violence is inevitable. It's sort of like a natural feature of human beings, human action, historical processes. So we were interested in understanding better how is it that that understanding is achieved. And that led us to identify these mechanisms. One of them, for example, that it was very striking for us is that textbook narratives almost never or very rarely mention nonviolence as an option. Nonviolence movements, nonviolence historical figures. And I'm not talking from the present about the option of nonviolence in the past, but hardly any references to the movements and leaders that at these different historical episodes of conflict, violence, and war advocated for nonviolence movements. And for the most part, there's always some kind of response and social organization or individuals that advocate for a nonviolent means of addressing the conflict at hand. And history textbooks don't mention them, don't represent their voices, their perspectives. And we thought this is a very significant feature because if you think of the sort of discursive functions of narratives, what that communicates is that there's no alternative to violence. If no one at the time thought of anything different than responding or dealing with the conflict through violence, maybe it was not possible. Maybe that's sort of like a crazy or naive idea we have in the present, but in the past it wasn't possible. And that's actually not the case. So that's a very productive silence in textbook narratives.